So we have this fantastic book that's just come out, Keith Emerson. It's a wonderful book published by Rocket 88 Books, of course. The purchasing links are just below this video. The first question I have to ask is, how did this come about, and about your involvement with this project?
Well, Barry, I was invited by the publishers, Rocket 88, over a year ago now, to if I'd like to write a book about Keith Emerson. Of course, my reaction immediately was yes, indeed, very much so. And because I'd known Keith from the nice days way back in the 60s and followed his career. So I was very pleased and honoured, actually, that they would ask me to write an official book about Keith. And the nice thing was, of course, I had the full cooperation of the family.
Yeah.
I know you've spoken to Aaron just the other day. It was very helpful that I was able to talk to family members and fellow musicians, of course, all the people that admired Keith. So my job really was to do an introduction, telling the story of Keith from my perspective, and then to interview as many people as possible. And the rest of the book really comprises their thoughts about Keith. So that's how it came together. It took me 6 months, by the way.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, and it's a wonderful book. I mean, I've done an unboxing of it, but it's a gorgeous tome. I mean, Rocket 88 do a fantastic job with this sort of thing. They really do. It's, you can feel the quality of it, and it's getting to that silly time of year, so it'd make ideal Christmas present, won't it?
Absolutely, yes. I was stunned when I saw what they'd done. It was very clever because it's quite difficult to bring all of that to make a coherent narrative.
Yes, it's very
the editing was superb. Yeah.
I was going to ask, what are your earliest memories of Keith? I mean, because you were quite instrumental in pushing and promoting the Nice, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, that's true. Yes, because I was a young reporter on Melody Maker back in 1964. I joined, and my job was, would you believe, was to go out to lots of clubs and pubs and interview rock musicians. So, the ideal job. But no, I was a reporter for Melody Maker, and I was very lucky, really, because at that time there were so many great groups coming up. When I started, it was mainly bands like the Animals and the Spencer Davis Group, Georgie Fame and the Blue Flames, and of course live music was so important there. Melody Maker, of course, also featured what was in the charts, and so it'd be great if you get a really good band that also had a hit record. So that was a kind of battle. But no, with Keith and the Nice, I'd heard rumours about Keith. I'd already seen him, actually, without realising who he was, because I saw the T-Bones playing. He was playing organ with the T-Bones, R&B, and was a regular at the Marquee. And then I was involved with a band called The Attack, a young group that had one record. It was Hi-Ho Silver Lining. They thought it was going to be a big hit, but Jeff Beck beat them to it. I don't know if you remember that record at all. But
Silver Lining.
Yeah, Hi-Ho Silver Lining was Jeff Beck's one big hit single.
Yes.
So this group, The Attack, they had Davey Ellis with the guitar player, and Richard Sherman was their singer, and I knew the drummer as well, Brian Davison. And then eventually they gave up and broke up. Davey rang me and said, we're forming a new group and we've got this wonderful keyboard player. Would you like to come along and have lunch with us? So I went to Davey's flat, which is in Earl's Court. I think this is in early 1967, around about that time.
Yeah.
And they had this tiny room, and there was not a grand piano, an upright piano. And actually, when I think about Keith, whenever I met him, there was a piano. It was never far away. He was always close to a piano. And on this occasion, we all ran into this like overcrowded bedroom with the upright, and Keith started to play. And, I think he played Rondo, the Dave Brubeck number, and a few other things. Boogie Woogie, we hardly spoke. Just played in the piano. I was absolutely amazed. I thought, what a wonderful pianist. And then it turned out that he and Davey and later they had another drummer, and of course Lee Jackson was their bass player eventually. But on that occasion, it was just a matter of being introduced to Keith, realising right away he was magnificent all-round musician.
Yeah, I mean those shows, the Nice. I mean, they were quite theatrical in a way, weren't they? I mean, did you see all that the business with stabbing the organ with kitchen utensils and things like that?
Yeah, yeah. If you want to get ahead, get a Nice. But well, what happened just quickly? We all went off to the pub and had a drink in West London somewhere, and that's when the idea for the Nice was born.
Right.
I went to see them on their very early gigs.
Wow.
Playing, I think it's the White Hart Accent, playing to about 20 people.
Supporting P.P. Arnold?
Yes, Pat Arnold. The reason for the band coming together really was to support Pat Arnold. She needed a backing band, and Andrew Alden of Immediate Records came up with the idea of putting this band together, as I discovered later.
Yeah.
I thought I put it together, but actually, no, I haven't. When we were all sitting in the pub. And then, of course, it was terrific. But the thing was that they were mainly backing Pat doing song numbers, which they did very well. But then when they started the set, they started experimenting. Of course, Keith wanted to play jazz and rock and roll, and, boogie woogie, and on piano first of all. And then he got the Hammond organ involved, of course. And it was soon obvious that this band was so good that they should go out on their own. So Pat and the Nice parted company. And then I'd see them play at, I remember seeing them playing at one of the big festivals. I think it was the Windsor or Kempton Park. I should know from memory. Anyway, they played this in a tent. It was organised by the Marquis, so they had a tent there, obviously. And they had their roadie. They had some great ideas to attract a crowd. The tent was empty when they started playing.
Right.
So they let off a rocket to a few explosions, clouds of smoke, and people came running into the tent. And that's how the Nice started. Right away, they needed showmanship.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, John Peel famously said the Nice transmogrified horribly into Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Would you fundamentally disagree with that?
I totally disagree. No, I know John was a big fan of Nice. He really liked them, as I did. So he supported them with his radio shows as a DJ, and I was supporting them through the pages of Melody Maker. And I knew John. We were good friends, actually.
I think he had an issue with progressive rock, didn't he? I mean,
yes, I don't know why. Yeah, I think the reason was remember, it was the underground scene. Bands, he liked to champion the underdog.
Yeah.
And I was always pleased when the underdog became successful. I always thought it was a good thing. I was glad that all those bands I'd see at the Marquee were actually making hit records. But no, I don't fully understand why he was so hostile to the LP. I think the reason was they weren't hippies. They weren't part of the underground. They'd moved up to the big league.
I think he famously said ELP were a waste of talent and electricity.
I do remember that phrase. I was taken to task for that. I thought it was rather a silly thing to say, actually.
I mean, with ELP, I wonder actually. I don't think it was just ELP. I just think because he championed new wave and punk, didn't he, later on? But was it progressive rock in general, or was it just Emerson, Lake and Palmer?
I think probably progressive rock in general. Yes, I mean I actually coined that phrase. It was taken from progressive jazz.
You're the inventor of progressive rock, aren't you? The phrase itself. So how did that come about?
Well, because I was also a jazz fan. Melody Maker wrote about all kinds of music, and I loved West Coast progressive jazz, which was like Jerry Mulligan, Dave Brubeck, of course. That's part of that. But it went back to the 50s, and that was cool kind of music to listen to, playing R&B, rhythm and blues. And they had to progress and do their own material. And if they had their own interests, like Keith did, and Rick Wakeman later on, of course, they were well into classical music. So the idea of mixing classical music and rock wasn't such a bad idea, I think. So,
no.
And they opened things up. They wanted to use their technique and ability in a more exciting, interesting, and to make it appeal to wider audiences. Hence all the showmanship.
Well, Lester Bangs apparently in the USA was not that impressed with progressive rock either. He says that rock and roll should be drawn from the African American idiom, and that should be looking to bands like the Stooges and things like that. Whereas this stuff that has this European classical sensibility is not rock and roll really.
Well, funnily enough, I remember seeing ELP at the Fillmore East in York, and they played some rock and roll. They did Nut Rocker. They love playing rock and roll, actually. Never believe that, would you? And they played Nut Rocker, and it died to death. It was the encore number in Fillmore East. And the young American audiences were well into the kind of music that Jethro Tull and ELP were playing, contrary to critical opinion. But the fans definitely.
Yeah, because I mean, Tull after Aqualung were quite big there as well.
I was just going to say that Sorry. Speak up.
No, they were fine. I was going to say Jethro Tull after Aqualung were quite big.
Yes, they were tremendous. I mean, you thought I was a curmudgeon for criticising Jethro Tull later on.
Yeah, I'm going to come on to that actually. I've got a bone to pick with you really about passion play. But I was going to ask you, in your opinion, what made Keith so special, especially in comparison with his contemporaries like Rick Wakeman, Tony Banks, maybe? What made Keith so special?
Yes, it's interesting. When I heard Aaron talking to you recently, he said that Keith never really listened to other keyboard players, and that was true actually. He was quite jealous of. I have to confess, I learned that he was quite jealous of Rick Wakeman when Rick appeared on the front page of Melody Maker. One of my colleagues wrote about Rick when he became famous. And we put him on the cover, and I think Keith would rather prefer he was on the cover. So there was always a bit of professional jealousy lurking in the background. There is with all musicians. They're all the same. Actually, most jazz musicians are worse than others. But we won't go into that. But there was a bit of jealousy, and also I think Keith didn't really want to listen to other keyboard players, apart from his favourites, as you know, Dave Brubeck and Oscar Peterson, Thelonious Monk as well, I think. So he wasn't really wanting to listen too much to Tony, who I thought was a great keyboard player with Genesis, and Rick, of course. There were so many keyboard players. Actually, funnily enough, talking of keyboard players, there was an occasion when I was in the marquee with Keith, and we were watching a band, and there was this crazy keyboard player on stage. His name's Don Shin.
Okay.
You've probably not heard of.
No.
And he was completely, sorry, Don, if you're still with us, quite mad. He was showing off, jumping about, leaping about in the marquee.
That might have been an influence on Keith.
So it was an influence, yeah. Keith was quite impressed. I remember standing next to me laughing at this keyboard player. Yeah. That's amazing. What's he doing? So I think that did encourage him to actually. So he was open to influences.
I see. I think what Ian Anderson would describe one of those silly people that considers the Passion Play one of the greatest albums, Jethro Tull's albums. Was your issue with that you didn't like the album, or was it that show at the Wembley Empire Pool that you didn't care much for?
Yes, I was a big fan of Jethro Tull. I liked him a lot, and Ian Anderson, I love to interview. So perfect interviewee subject, so articulate, and clever, and generally kind to me as well. We always got on well, but on this occasion, unfortunately, they spent 20 minutes not playing. Were you there at the show? Did you actually see the show?
No. I know I look quite aged, but 1973, I would have been. I was born in 68, so I would have been about 5 or 6, I think.
Oh, I see. Yes, of course. Yeah.
But I would have loved to have seen it. So what was wrong with it? Was it the show, or was it the music that was the problem for you?
I think it was the tremendously long wait. 20 minutes they fiddled about without. We're all sitting there waiting, the audience, and everybody was getting rather impatient because they had this idea of throbbing light, as I recall. But something like Pink Floyd might do, big build up. And it just went on, and then that kind of put you in a bad mood, less receptive mood. So actually, having heard the album since, the music is great. There's some great music on it, but it was really more the show. And I think that the other thing was that my sub-editor Alan Lewis, now departed sadly, put the headline "A Crime of Passion," which I didn't actually write, but that was his idea. So the review looked worse than it actually was.
So I take it you're no longer on Ian Anderson's Christmas card list.
Well, at the time, it caused a great hoo-ha, and the editor of Melody Maker, Ray Coleman, and the manager of Jethro Tull got together and made this announcement that Jethro Tull was so demoralised and upset by my terrible review that they were going to break up. Jethro Tull to break up.
Yeah.
That's what breaks up Jethro Tull. So
wasn't it their manager? I think Ian Anderson has gone on record saying it was actually his manager that did that without his knowing about it.
Ah, that's interesting. Yeah, because a lot of this I didn't know at the time. I thought, oh my God, I've broken up Jethro Tull. But it was a bit of a setup, really, yeah, between the manager and Ray Coleman. Yeah. But they were revealed years later. Anyway, we made up.
Yeah.
I just want to say very quickly about Jethro Tull. I went later to see them playing at the Madison Square Garden in New York when they were doing a Jethro Tull link up with the Tull
Oh, Heavy Horses tour.
That's the one. Yeah. And I actually played drums. I played drums on stage.
Do you really?
At the soundcheck.
Are you on the video? Or is it just the soundcheck, is it?
Well, we played Telstar. Do you remember Telstar, the Tornadoes hit? And that's that kind of links. And I was allowed to sit in and play. And I thought, my God, I'm playing to a completely empty Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, back to Keith.
Well, actually, I was going to ask you, moving away from Keith, I was actually going to ask you about your experiences with Pink Floyd. Did you ever see Pink Floyd with Syd Barrett at all?
I did, yes. I saw them a few times. Well, memorably at the Royal Albert Hall when they were with The Nice and Jimi Hendrix, all on the same bill, all playing 17-minute sets. And I saw Pink Floyd.
What was your impression of Syd?
Well, Syd was remarkable. I thought he was a terrific, great singer, wonderful composer, and completely unique. And I had the good fortune to interview him a couple of times. And
how did you find him?
Well, people were worried about him having OD'd on acid. I suppose that's what he was doing, which led to him eventually leaving the band. But when I spoke to him, he had a great sense of humour, actually. I think a lot of that madness was slightly an act, in retrospect. I'm not sure if he wasn't just sending somebody up, or whether he really was collapsing mentally. But there was an element of both. But I did a blind date session with him. I played him all the latest records and singles. And I played him David Bowie sing. And he hated it. He said, "That's terrible. I hate that." I wasn't happy with David Bowie, which surprised me. But no, I liked Syd Barrett, and I did an interview with him at a television studio, and I saw the management of the band peering through the window, and they said, "Oh, he's talking. It's okay." They were relieved he actually spoke.
Yeah, I mean, you did this wonderful book on Close to the Edge or something like that. I can't remember. It's on my Kindle. You talked about the combative atmosphere and conflict within the band at the time. Steve Howe, in an interview, said that you were alluding to the friction between Bruford and Chris Squire. Was the friction just between those two, or did you feel it was more of a whole band fisticuffs?
Well, yeah, I travelled with the band a lot, and I knew them very well, and I was always disappointed if there was any friction. It didn't show when I was actually with them, but I think what it was the endless travelling, and Bill got to hate being in the van and or in a car and being driven through snow at high speeds to a gig, and then somebody crashing the car. And if Chris was driving, that's a bit terrifying. Also, of course,
late, wasn't he?
Yeah, well, they had two different personalities. Well, they'd both been to public school, I think. So, no, I didn't realise. I mean, they all shared the flat in Fulham for a while. Yeah. And you've got about 5 blokes all sort of leading different social lives and having different manners and attitudes, and that's where things go wrong a bit, I think. I remember somebody telling me that they never did any washing up. The whole place was a tip. But I think Bill got fed up with Chris mainly for being late to get into the van for a gig, and that annoyed him. He was very impatient and very, Bill was always very sort of, not very forgiving about other people's faults. So I think that's how they fell out. But unfortunately, I did quote Bill talking rather disparagingly about this, and that upset Chris. I know he was annoyed, and I did cut that out, that reference from later editions of the book. So sometimes you can overstep the mark a bit.
Were you as enamored with punk and new wave as John Peel was? Because you wrote a book on Adam and the Ants, didn't you?
Yeah, I liked Adam and the Ants, and also Generation X. I interviewed them, and the weird thing was, of course, I realised that there was this vast sort of dominance of progressive rock groups, the ones I'd always supported and encouraged and hoped would be successful, and enjoyed their success actually. But I realised, penny dropped, that there was a vast number of people out there who rather resented all that, and also musicians too, bands that couldn't get a look in, and they were still just playing in pubs for pennies. And of course, there was the feeling, can't we just sort of play rock music without having to go through conveyor belts or three enormous buses? And, the trucks that the ELP had, for example, not conveyor belts, what were they?
They had articulated lorries, didn't they?
Articulated lorries.
They had three of them, didn't they?
Three of them, yeah. Not conveyor belts, but similar. So there was this feeling that the bands had become too big for their own boots, so to speak, and that was the pub rock reaction, and people went to see them. They all liked them. Not as good as ELP, or I didn't think, or Yes, or Genesis, but still fun, why not? And then it all turned a bit nasty with punk rock. The attitude overnight became this kind of manufactured, I think, aggression.
Yeah, it's interesting though. I mean, for me, if you might agree with me, for me, punk is about getting back to that sort of aesthetic of 50s rock and roll. It was a single culture rather than an album culture, and it was going back to attitude rather than musical virtuosity. The problem with punk is that all the nihilism and things like that I didn't care much for. But do you think punk had to happen?
Well, yes, I could understand why. But I went to a few punk gigs which were quite horrible, actually. The attitude, the menace. I'm not going with a support band somewhere, some university gig. And, you sort of felt you were clenching your fists, waiting to be attacked by somebody. Have a fight with someone. It was that kind of aggression, and people spitting at bands, which I hated.
Well, I read somewhere that somebody said, in the late 70s, large youth unemployment, discontent, people feeling disenfranchised, and the youth couldn't therefore identify with, millionaires in capes playing classical concertos on stage.
No, I can see that point of view, of course. Yeah, if you're in a tower block somewhere.
Yeah.
And you feel resentful, don't you, for that understanding that those bands themselves were all broke at one stage and living on cheese sandwiches, and no money. But miraculously, they all became successful. But I did go and see the Sex Pistols, and it was my duty as a reporter not to ignore what was happening. To my surprise, they played really well. I think it's Brunel University.
They were a lot tighter and better band than Malcolm McLaren liked to say they were. He was the one who put the rumours around that they couldn't play, and it didn't matter. But they were actually better than that, I think.
It's true. I was surprised how good they were. And Johnny Rotten actually said, do you like the new numbers? Do you like the lighting? And he was engaging with the audience. So it wasn't nearly as barbaric or anarchic as I thought it was going to be. So actually, the Sex Pistols live could be a really good band.
I was going to ask you, actually. We go back to Emerson, Lake and Palmer and this wonderful book, but I was going to ask you, my feeling is the best ELP album is the debut album. To what extent would you agree with me?
Yes, well, strangely enough, not long before Keith passed away. Well, yes, it was earlier that year. We had a long conversation, several conversations. I was writing sleeve notes for a box set of ELP albums, and and I asked him about the album. So I just found my interview with him. And I said, he said, I asked him what he thought of the album, and he said that I was very proud of it. He said he was very proud. That's an artistic thing. Oh God, yes, he said. Yeah, I asked him what he thought of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the first 3 albums probably, but there was a lot more music to come, and they spread it rather more thinly, I suppose. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, but by the way, I was going to say, I asked them if they all got on well together. Keith said most of the time we did, other times we did not. Typically, arguments were mainly about artistic things, but I admired Greg and Carl. Emerson, Lake and Palmer was a great band. So that's what some of his final words to summing up.
Yeah, and it's a befitting word to for ELP, because they were a great band. They were a unique band as well, and this unique tone certainly does them justice, I think, and it's definitely worth having. I was going to ask you one last question. It's a bit of a stinker, I'll warn you in advance. Is what would you consider to be the greatest progressive rock album?
Oh yes, that's tricky, isn't it? Yeah, the greatest ever. Not necessarily ELP. It could be anybody.
Anyone you want. You know.
Yeah.
If you had to present something to somebody who'd never heard of the genre and say this is progressive rock, the best.
Actually, in a funny way, I'd go for the first Nice album. Actually, yeah, because that's kind of fresh and innocent and full of ideas, and it was
the thoughts of Davy.
Yeah, thoughts of M.N.S. Davjak.
That's the one. Yeah,
because that kind of started it all, really.
Yeah,
Everybody wanted to sort of open the floodgates, and it was very had that amazing youthful enthusiasm, and it was all fresh and new and exciting. And seeing them live as well makes me think that actually probably that was the first progressive rock album, and still one of the best. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, Keith Emerson was a unique talent, and I think within the prog community, he certainly missed.
Absolutely, yeah.
I certainly welcome this book and the contributions that you've made to it, and as well as Aaron Emerson, which I had the pleasure of speaking to him about it this week, I think it was. But yeah, it's absolutely fabulous, and I want to thank you for your time, for coming here and chatting to me for a little bit about. We finally got there in the end.
Yes, I'm sorry about the delay. Yeah, technical problems. Yeah.
Yes.
It's like trying to operate Keith's Moog synthesizer, plugging things in.
I bet
to get everything to work. Yeah.
I bet it was. Anyway, Chris, thank you so much for doing this. Enjoy the rest of your day. Have you got any more interviews lined up?
One more at 2:00. Yes, that's right.
Okay. I'll let you go and have a cup of tea or something.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
A pleasure, Barry. Thanks very much for such a nice interview. Thank you so much.
Okay. All the best. Bye-bye.
All the best. Yeah. Cheers. Bye.